All right, welcome to the Bacon Bibles and Barbells show. My name is Justin Johnson. I'm joined by coaches Emily and Amanda today because we're going to talk about postpartum considerations as it pertains to your health, fitness, etc., and how to recover well. And a lot of postpartum, like how that's going to go. Half of it's probably how you like what was your health state before you were postpartum, and then what are you doing when you're actually postpartum. So I'll mostly let the ladies take it over this time. So that's kind of the intro to the topic. We will have more similar things to discuss as it pertains to pregnancy and stuff. We don't want to go like, this isn't pregnancy. We'll just talk about it only insofar as we have to set up a good postpartum recovery. But it's not meant to be like an exhaustive, like, here's how to be healthy all through your
Mhm.
pregnancy, because that would actually sort of be a separate topic. So, yeah, Amanda, Emily, take it from here.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to talk about this. It's very often overlooked. A lot of times women will just quit exercising completely when they
Yeah.
find out that they're pregnant. And so I definitely want to talk about why it's so important to continue exercising. If you're not exercising already, why you should start exercising.
Right.
And also tackle some of the nutrition topics, maybe bust some myths about eating for two and things like that. So first
Yeah.
of all, yeah, I wanted to talk about fitness. And going even before pregnancy. If you are trying to get pregnant, you should be exercising and eating well now so that
Yeah.
it's way easier as you're entering in because there's a lot of stuff that goes on when you're in a pregnancy. You don't know what your morning sickness may or may not be like, or your fatigue or anything like that, so you're going to get a leg up on all of those things if you start before you are even pregnant. So um,
So,
just wanted to
Amanda,
lay that on the table first.
should you fire your coach when you discover you're pregnant?
You should absolutely not. You should let them know immediately and make some adjustments as needed, but that is not the time to quit.
Yeah.
That's actually the time to really commit.
Because I know
Yeah.
we've had that happen. You've had that happen. It seems to be like
Mhm.
the go-to. It's like, oh, I'm pregnant. I'm now a fragile China doll, and I have to
Uh-huh.
stop all exercise and training. And before they're even like feeling poorly, or they have symptoms,
Yes.
even they just get that positive pregnancy test, and they feel like they immediately have to
Mhm.
stop. So what advice would you give that lady, Amanda?
First of all, I understand the feeling of it. Your whole world just got turned upside down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're now looking forward to this child coming along, and there's a lot going through your mind. How am I going to afford this? What doctor do I pick? What do I do? What do I eat? How do I move? And so it's just so much coming at you at once. And that's when having a coach is very important and beneficial because it kind of takes some of that off your plate. All of those decisions that you have to make, you are entrusting somebody with being able to structure that for you. And it should be viewed as something that is beneficial, something that is helpful, not as just another bill or another thing you have to do.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's definitely the time to communicate even further with your coach instead of just backing out.
Right, right. And it's not like the body stops becoming, adaptive just because we get pregnant or
Hmm.
stops doing all those normal processes. And I appreciate the view that you do want to protect the baby and you want to protect your own health.
Yeah.
And you obviously want to prioritize this sweet little soul that's now coming into the world. But
Hmm.
there's always balance there, right? Like it's not like you stop driving because you might get in a car wreck or
Right.
anything like that. There's always a risk in life and you have to balance those risks. And as far as training goes, even training with a barbell and weights, there's
Hmm.
again always balance, right? Like you don't want to be pushing yourself into exhaustion every session, especially if you're dealing with complications. But I think more
Yeah.
women can push themselves more than they might think during pregnancy, and
Hmm.
especially can start, and especially if you work with somebody like a coach, you can ease in slowly and carefully, and they can be keeping an eye on you and asking how you're doing.
Exactly.
So what do you think about barbells specifically, or weights with pregnancy, Amanda? Because I feel like women are totally fine doing yoga or walking or some of those exercises
Right.
when they're pregnant, but there seems to be a big hesitation with the weights specifically, and not just from women. I have seen men, comment online and be like, "What are you doing? That's so terrible for you, so terrible for
Right.
baby." Like, so
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah. One of the general rules of working out in pregnancy is whatever you're doing before you
Yeah.
are pregnant, you can generally continue doing, like whatever level of fitness. If you're running a lot, you can keep running. If you're lifting barbells, you can keep lifting barbells. And and generally even quite close to the weights that you're already using.
Yeah.
You're going to want to lower that as you get further into the pregnancy, if there's any discomfort, or especially if there's any other issues going on in your pregnancy. But it's still completely okay. You may not want to do things like a clean or a snatch or anything like that, because especially as the belly gets bigger, you
Right.
don't want to bump anything into it. So
Yeah.
there's a way
Yeah.
to safely do it. You can still squat, you can still do deadlifts, you can still you might not want to do bench press, because at some point that's going to cause
Yeah.
some pressure on blood vessels and breathing and stuff
Right.
that you should probably avoid. But you can shoulder press, and there's tons of other options out there that you can continue doing. And I mean, honestly, the the biggest part of continuing to lift when you're pregnant is it's going to make your labor easier.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already in shape, it's going to help you to recover faster postpartum.
Yeah.
And plus you're just setting yourself up to already have some good habits, which then you can teach to your child that's coming along. So it's a really good time to change any of those aspects of your lifestyle going forward and for your family.
Right. Right. Yeah, totally agree. So, as far as like when you're experiencing pregnancy
Hmm.
and you're training, I think there are both like physical benefits and like biological benefits, and also even some mental
Right.
benefits for like while you're pregnant. When you talked about that a little bit already, and even some like I think hunger signaling, benefits
Hmm.
like that. What are some things you've seen when you've worked with pregnant ladies, or even just other people that you've seen go through it, where you're like, especially if they've been pregnant before, like not training, like where they like, wow, that made a big difference. Like, what are some things that you've seen?
That's kind of difficult to compare when you're talking about two different pregnancies, even in the same woman, because we know every time is different, and different cravings and different experiences. However, it seems to go by a little faster and a little easier if you are in shape and moving. If you're having, any kind of cramping or discomfort, getting out and moving actually is what helps that, not sitting still.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I've heard from other friends of mine who have been pregnant and they've exercised during their pregnancy is all those little discomforts get better when they start
Right.
to move around,
Right.
even if it's just walking. But I mean, of course, I generally still encourage lifting to some extent, but it's going to ease all those aches and pains and all the discomfort that comes with pregnancy. Also, it's going to help with digestion. If you're up and kind of walking around a little bit, heartburn is super, super common in pregnancy. But getting around and walking, you kind of using gravity as your tool there to help digestion,
Yeah.
it really,
Yeah.
really helps a lot with things like heartburn, as well as just adjusting nutrition. That helps
Right.
as well. It helps manage your weight gain as well. You're going to put on some weight when you're pregnant, and it's going to mitigate some of the amount of weight that you're putting on in pregnancy if you're moving, if you're working out, and reduces risk of complications. Just as this, sorry, gestational diabetes is very, very common,
Yeah.
um, and it should not be as common as it is.
No.
So
No.
moving around is going to help your insulin sensitivity to where that is going to be less of a risk. Preeclampsia is also helped by getting up and moving around. And so
Hmm.
your cardiovascular health, your respiratory health, all of those things can be optimal during pregnancy if you're continuing a fitness routine.
Right. It seems like when you're pregnant, and this was totally for me when I was pregnant too, and it seems like almost every pregnant lady I know, it's like, I get it, especially towards the end, you're so tired, you just want to sit down.
Yeah.
But I think that just the movement, even if you're not training with weights, like you mentioned, like just moving regularly has so many great benefits.
Yeah.
And there's a way to think about it, right? Where, especially as Christian women, we want to be stewarding everything that we have well, including like our health and all the advantages that we can give the sweet little baby. And there's ditches you can fall into, right? Where like pushing too hard, too fast, where you're like, you should actually sit. Like you're pregnant, you might need to rest a little bit. But there's the other ditch where it's like, I just want to eat ice cream and sit on my butt and not keep moving that. And some of that movement just mitigates, like you said, so many things, like just maintaining a healthy amount of movement during pregnancy. And I think that, only we can really know what is best fitting. That's kind of a household and individual decision as far as like how much is too much. But
Right.
I think that I wish that more women would embrace the moving a little bit more during their pregnancies, just because of everything you just mentioned.
There's also just well-documented stimulatory effect of training in general, where you do overall actually have the experience of feeling like you have more energy when you're training regularly.
For sure.
Well, not necessarily like immediately after training, but there is a very real stimulatory effect. And some of these issues of feeling chronically fatigued, if you're someone that's not pregnant and you are being very sedentary, you're tired all the time. If you're someone that is, you work a desk job and you come home and then you sit in front of the TV and that's your existence, you are going to be chronically tired all the time. You're going to always feel like you just exerted yourself, basically. That's not the case for people who train. And so part of this does come down to, I think, pregnancy exaggerating some of the human experience. When it comes to the experience of fatigue and then the aches and pains and other things like that, because I mean, obviously you're going to get hip pain and lower back pain and things like that. But the way to mitigate it for a pregnant person is the same as someone who's not pregnant. Like it doesn't
You're
really
still
change.
human.
It just sort of magnifies behavior, like many
Correct.
other things in life. It's like, like the joke about like someone that gets drunk. Like getting drunk doesn't put anything in your head that wasn't already there. It just removed the filter. And pregnancy is a little bit like that, where
it is,
whatever you're doing, the effects are probably going to be magnified, including, by the way, muscle growth. There's actually good reason to believe that you can actually put on muscle more expeditiously while you're pregnant. So like, and you wouldn't want to be necessarily maxing out all the time anyway. And so like a hypertrophy program could make a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of growth happening. So
you're full of
there's
growth
hormones.
factors.
Exactly. There's a lot of hormones that are growing a baby, and there's definitely reason to assume that it's going to help your muscles grow as well if you do it correctly. Some things that you should adjust as far as fitness program is making sure that you're doing things like squats, things that will help to strengthen the pelvic floor so that you're able to recover a lot easier after giving birth. Don't do any of Valsalva maneuvers, the deep belly breath holding whenever you're bracing for a lift. That is not great for the blood pressure. And so it's good to avoid that if you are pregnant, or at least not go to as extremes as you would if you were not pregnant.
I would think it could be okay as long as you're not lifting heavy weights with that, right? Like if you're doing RDLs, right, for sets of 10, you're not going to go that heavy. And so like I would think that a Valsalva could be okay.
As long as you're getting a little bit of a breath between reps and you're not like really, really taking that breath in and pushing.
Yeah, and don't wear a belt. The thing is that a belt is going to increase pressure. I mean, at a certain point, nobody could convince you to put one on. But like even once you find out you're pregnant, I would recommend just don't wear a belt, because a belt increases the intra-abdominal pressure more than what your muscles could ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely avoid that. And also keep in mind that your body temperature is increased when you are pregnant. So
Right.
hydration is of the utmost importance. I know we have to pee a lot when we're pregnant anyway, but I'm sorry, still you still got to drink your water.
It's just worth it to drink that water and go pee.
Well, I know another
Yes.
aspect of that too is get your salt in. I think that's why a lot of
Yeah.
women have some of
Mhm.
the funny cravings they do, like pickles with stuff. I think it's purely related to salt craving. I think it's just
Mhm.
like you've been sweating more and your body temperature is higher.
Yeah.
You're going to go through water faster, so you deplete salt more rapidly. And a lot of the foods that people seek when they're pregnant, like that I see women eating that are generally not so good for them,
Mhm.
tend to just be like high sugar, high carb, but not even high salt. And so you're not only running low on protein, you're also running low on salt. And so the cravings, I think that's where a lot of the crazy cravings come from, is low salt, low protein.
Yeah, there's a lot of common cravings during pregnancy, and they can be related to different deficiencies. Like if you're
Hmm.
craving chocolate a lot, it's likely that you need more magnesium. If you're craving ice a lot, there's also some women who will want to eat pottery, like clay pots. Like that's
Oh
what
Right,
yeah,
they are
right.
yeah.
craving.
Yeah.
And so that's an iron deficiency.
Yep.
If you have any of that, salty foods, if you
Yeah.
want salty foods, you probably have an electrolyte imbalance. Add some salt to your water or something. And,
Right.
different things like that. If you're craving ice cream and stuff a lot, you might actually be short on calcium. The body wants dairy. And so,
Hmm.
but just don't let that be an excuse to eat absolutely anything and everything. You
Right.
don't need to be eating for two. You it doesn't, I mean, babies, they come out small, They're not
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. It's like eating for a
not a full
1.1.
size.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Do you
you
want to?
really don't need much extra calories at all in the first trimester.
Right.
And the second, maybe bump it by 300 calories a day, 450 in the third trimester.
Hmm.
That's probably it. You really don't need anything beyond that, or you're going to have a lot to lose after you are done with the pregnancy.
Right. Right. And the healthier habits. I know you mentioned this earlier, and we'll probably talk about it again once we get to postpartum. And it's like the more healthy habits you can maintain during your pregnancy,
Mhm.
the those better your postpartum's going to go. Like.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to take a moment to talk a little bit about core exercises while you're pregnant. And this is important. I know it's very difficult to do a lot of things with your core
Hmm.
when you get further along in pregnancy, but many women get diastasis recti, which is the vertical separation of the abdominal
Right.
muscles.
I've always
And
heard of it.
yeah, there's different degrees, like
Right.
how many fingers wide they are, and
Yep.
whether you need it surgically repaired or if you don't.
Right.
So doing core exercises while you're pregnant, certain ones will be very beneficial and will help prevent. I can't say it's a fail safe method, but
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're pregnant with multiples,
Yeah.
you're
There will
more than
always
likely
be
going.
some separation.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But not really crunches. You don't really need to do crunches, but if you do um, bird dogs,
Hmm.
dead bugs, things
Yep.
like that are a little bit more stabilizing. If
Right.
you're able to do a plank, if you're not,
Yeah.
that far along in pregnancy where your belly is still touching the floor, that's a good one as well.
You can
And
always use elevation with the planks too.
that's
You can
true.
have your
You
feet on the
definitely can.
floor and have your arms up on a chair or something like that.
Yep.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Or you can even have your arms extended instead of being down on your elbows.
Yeah.
It's similar as
Right.
well. So
Yeah.
also using things like sumo stance for squats instead
Yeah.
of having your feet closer together, especially as you get farther along in pregnancy, is going to be helpful for the pelvic floor, and keeping squats in for the core strength is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really good advice, Amanda. I've seen, because it used to be, and I'm sure you heard this too, it's like, don't touch the core when you're pregnant. Like, just don't
Uh
do
huh.
anything. Everybody was like, you're going to mess it up. You're going to get diastasis recti. And I've seen even just the last like 2 years, there be a lot more coming out saying, like, you
Hmm.
do want to do something for your core while you're pregnant, even if you're just tensing or, doing like those holds or something, just to keep
Hmm.
it engaged. Because I've seen in a lot of postpartum women, and including myself, like you have a hard hard time even feeling those sometimes if you haven't been working on them like consistently. And so even getting them to like engage and, you know, do those small exercises, if you do have diastasis recti or end up in that position, which I did, I had a 2.5 finger separation after 3 of our kids, and slowly had to work it back in over time. But it's like, but when I first started trying to rehab that, I could like barely even feel where I needed to like tense up and tighten and all those motions. And because at that time I wasn't doing anything like during pregnancy, and I so wish that I would have. But I'm glad to see more emphasis on just keeping it engaged while you're pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. There's those stomach vacuums, and it's really cool to watch. You've probably seen the videos or
Yes,
even
I
tried
love
it
that.
yourself, where
Yeah.
you can almost completely suck the baby like into
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And it's not only cool to watch, it's also really beneficial. It's the
Yeah.
same method as a stomach vacuum. It's going to help you when you're in labor and you're having to push to have that core activation, and you're actually able to feel it and know what muscles to use. I mean, the body kind of just knows anyway, but it's helpful
Yeah.
to
It is.
have
Yeah.
that already developed.
Yeah.
And again, I would go back to core strength before you're even pregnant is going to make
Right.
it easier the whole time. I know when you get to the end, everything's just, you know, all out there and loose and and difficult, but the better care of yourself that you take during the pregnancy is going to make the last trimester way easier.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Is there anything nutrition wise in pregnancy you wanted to touch on?
Yes, absolutely. Keep
Okay, go
the
for it.
protein up. I mean, women
Yes.
are very low on protein.
Mhm.
Almost 50% of our country, I believe, is the last statistic. It may be even higher, of women are not hitting their protein
Right. Not
when
even,
they're not
this is just
pregnant.
not pregnant women.
Right.
Yeah, this is not
Right.
protein, not hitting the protein that we would recommend. This is not hitting
Yeah.
like the minimum, which is like 0.35
Yeah,
or
it'd be like 50
0.4
grams or something. Right?
grams per pound or something like
Yeah.
that. So, you know,
Uh-huh.
like, you know, most women, you know, should be like 50 grams is what they're basically saying, 50 to 60 grams per day, which is not
Yeah,
much.
the recommended daily allowance is remarkably low. I would
Yeah.
still say 100 should be your minimum.
Yes.
It's a little more difficult to go off of body weight when you're pregnant because you're growing a child, and that
Yeah.
changes your weight a little bit. But I mean, bare minimum, I would
Yeah,
say
exactly.
100
Yeah.
should be where you start. Iron and folate as well. Folic acid has been talked about, but the body just doesn't process it quite the same. Folate is the better choice of those. So that's going to be really helpful for preventing anemia, things like leafy greens, red meat.
Right.
This is your time to get steak in, of course, and
Yes.
things
Yes.
like that. Omega-3s as well. So
Yeah.
I know seafood is kind of a touchy topic whenever we're talking about pregnancy. Some doctors allow it, some don't. Some say just not shellfish or no deli meat or no
Right.
raw
Right.
fish, but you can have cooked fish. So, I mean, I am an advocate for continuing eating fish if it's cooked
Yeah.
when you're pregnant.
Yeah. Same. Especially if those,
So
like you said, those omega-3 rich fish. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like salmon, which is way too pricey, but is very good. Very
It's so
good for
good. And
you.
it's so good for you. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
getting your fruits and vegetables in, you just cover all those micronutrient bases.
Yeah.
Your body is going to prioritize the baby that's growing. So you need to make sure that you have enough for the both of you. And not saying eat for two, like we talked about already, but
Right.
have enough nutrients for yourself and a growing baby.
So
Right.
that's, I think, a lot of the like setting up as good of a postpartum as possible.
Mhm.
So now you've had the baby. How do you proceed?
Well, first, take a few weeks off. You're going to need a rest. I think the advice the doctors give is typically don't lift anything over over the weight of your baby for a little while. I think you can gradually start to ease that in. Most women feel a little bit more ready to go and start things before the end of that 6-week period. So you can kind of listen to your body, making sure you're still communicating
Yeah.
and other eyes are on you. So you're not just making these decisions to start something when it might not be a wise idea. But you can, of course, go on walks. You may even be able to start with some light dumbbells within just a few weeks if you're sleeping enough. and, and also just making sure to check for any diastasis recti and any pelvic floor issues is really important. So you're probably not going to be able to do much for the pelvic floor until after the 6 weeks are over. But then you can introduce, maybe start with body weight squats and then add some weight, not jumping in. Everything needs to go gradually, except for nutrition. That should just be good all the time. There's not really a time to take a break from good nutrition.
Right.
But as far as any pelvic floor exercises, I know Kegels are often recommended, but they are not the best. They're not as good as squats. They're not as good as like a floor glute bridge, for example. Those are both better options than Kegels. That doesn't mean you can't work them in, but they're not the only solution.
Yeah, I view something like that as more like a supplemental accessory work. You know, like it's like the finisher or something. Like it just in the same sense that we often rely on like compound barbell movements to do the majority of the stimulation, and then we move to more isolation work later in the workout. I think that it's kind of more of that kind of concept.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that you can, do more easily when you're just sitting around holding your baby or something. But I would recommend at least body weight squats at the very least when you're able to move and you have the all clear to go ahead with exercise. And like I said before, walking is great. It's going to be probably great for the baby as well. A lot of babies have bilirubin levels that are off, and getting them in the sun is great for them if they're kind of leaning toward being jaundiced at all. And getting out in the early morning, just like we recommend to everybody, getting out in the first sunlight of the day, basically, and walking for about 30 minutes or so is a really good place to start. It's going to also help combat postpartum depression.
Yes.
And I don't think I would recommend a cold plunge like we do sometimes for depression type things, but that's because your body has just gone through this major stress and you don't necessarily want to get the adrenaline going in that way, but the early morning walks are a great thing to throw in.
Situation postpartum where
Yeah, I would think you'd want to wait a couple weeks or so before you start doing cold plunges again. One thing that's important about getting out for walks too with the baby is you're also helping them establish their circadian rhythm. Because babies are often opposite when they come out for whatever reason. And so like helping them get into a circadian rhythm is good for their health, good for the mother's health, and also just good for your sanity.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They've been in this kind of dark world for 9 months, and it's not easy to know when you're supposed to be awake and asleep, and they're just figuring everything out for the first time. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and for those women that have diastasis recti, which is probably going to be most women, how do we address that directly, and when should we start?
I would begin that once you're clear, probably about 5 or 6 weeks postpartum. And I mean, some of it's going to come together on its own. Sometimes you don't need to do a whole lot of rehab, and it's just taking some time to close back up.
Don't freak out 24 hours after birth.
No. Nothing is normal at that point.
Right. Give it 3, 4, 5 weeks and then see where you're at and how bad it is.
I would still go back to those dead bug and bird dog as staples in healing diastasis recti, just because you're not doing a whole lot of movement. When you have especially a larger degree of separation and you're doing crunches, you can see part of your stomach come out in the middle.
Coning. Yeah.
Yes. And so, and that's really scary to see. So doing some of those more core stabilization exercises first before reintroducing something like a crunch is probably really helpful. Maybe even some leg raises. However, most people just aren't able to engage their core the right way with those, and it ends up becoming a hip flexor exercise instead. So only if you're able to do those properly, I would do those.
I
Yeah.
like the one thing too, the banded twists, because you can go really light on those where you just attach a band to a wall, have your arms straight out and just twist.
Yes.
You can really
Yes, those
kind of
are great.
suck it in when
Yeah.
you do that. Like you have to have good. You want to try to have good proprioception. You can kind of like
Mhm.
pull in the middle of the abdominals and really get that squeeze. And you can do it at really light weights.
Yeah.
So like you could start
Yeah.
that fairly early because you're not really moving much weight. It's not going to cause a lot of pressure or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of different resistance levels on bands, so that's a great way to
Right.
start and even be able to progress a little bit at a time. Just like you said, making sure you're sucking in. Like think of your belly button as the rotation point. Like that's what you're
Mhm.
kind of rotating around and holding in a little bit more.
Yeah. I've also had really good luck with women, depending on the severity, but if it is more severe, just even starting with the heel slides on your back and
Yeah.
really trying to, breathe out, breathe in, and engage that lower abdominal as you're bringing the heels up. And if it's really,
Hmm.
we could even start with like one leg at a time, bringing it up, then alternating, and then you bring both up, and then you sleep, like move, progress into like a little
Hmm.
bit of leg lift and things like that. Because some of these women just have a really hard time even feeling that, and that has seemed to work well, for myself and some other ladies. And I know you mentioned the breathing, and just one thing to watch out for, is that coning of like if you're holding your breath like way in your chest and up here and you're creating a lot of that pressure, like you mentioned, you will be able to see where the separation is and there'll be a bump in your stomach, and they call it like the coning. That's what you want to watch out
Yeah.
for postpartum. You don't want to make that worse. And so that learning how to breathe, and I always refer to it like a zipper. Like you want to
Hmm.
breathe like and pretend you're zipping up your abs so they stay flat and you don't have
Yeah.
that coming out while you're exercising, whether you're doing squats or you're just trying to lean back into anything that where you're going to be having that pressure in your abdominals. The coning
Hmm.
is bad. You want to practice that, like, okay, I'm holding everything in and
Uh-huh.
seeing that nice flat abdominal, as you're exercising.
I love that illustration of the zipper. I think that makes a lot of
It's
sense,
been really
especially with
helpful explaining it that way.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what you're trying to do too is zip that back up.
Right, you're saying, "Get back up. Get back in there, buddy."
Yeah, you have to really think of like bringing the two sides together, I think,
Yes.
Yeah.
actively.
Mhm.
And you probably want to have that
Mhm.
perception during any abdominal movements that you're doing postpartum.
Yeah.
And even once you start even doing body weight squats or anything like that where you have to contract the abs, the more you have that proprioception of just thinking of bringing those two sides together,
Mhm.
Mhm.
like you're going to smash them together and hold them there during any movement whatsoever. It's probably very helpful. I mean, you can even do this when you start going for walks.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the easy and nice thing about stomach vacuums, for example, and that's that muscle, the transverse abdominal that goes around your middle, kind of like a belt that you can do anywhere. Like when you're going on a walk, you're sitting and watching TV, you can just hold a
Yeah.
stomach vacuum
Mhm.
for like 30 to 60 seconds. You can also kind of do it like a set of like many sets in a row, hold it for 10
Right.
seconds, relax for 10 seconds, hold it for 10 seconds, relax for 10 seconds. And you'll notice the more you're able to do it, the more you're able to actually suck in
Yeah.
and that belt like muscle around your abs is going to help to pull together and um, zip that back up.
Right. Right. Definitely. So you'd say like 5, 6 weeks postpartum, you could start
Mhm.
training again, feeling good again. What do you think is a realistic goal? Because we all know postpartum, every woman is like, want to get back to pre-baby as soon
Mhm.
as possible.
Mhm.
How do you get me there? And obviously, it can be very frustrating because of all the different things you have going on postpartum and the things you did or didn't do while you were
Mhm.
pregnant, before you were pregnant. So,
I
how,
think the biggest determining factor there is going to be what was your state before pregnancy,
Mhm.
during
Mhm.
pregnancy, what were your activity levels.
Yeah.
So like that is going to determine a lot
Mhm.
because some
Yeah.
women come into this postpartum and
Yeah.
that's actually when they start taking their health really really seriously. And they're like, oh, after I had the baby, I started training.
Right.
In fact, that was the
That
way
was
it was
me.
with
Yep.
you. Yeah, after the last baby is when Emily started training.
Yep.
And so like it is going to change
Yeah.
and can you have expectations of
Yeah.
going back? Not really.
Realistic
In
expectations.
certain senses, you can't.
Yeah, the realistic expectations would you just kind of have to start with none, honestly. You don't know how quickly you're gonna get back into shape. You don't know how or where you're gonna work out sometimes. Now childcare is something you might have to figure out, or maybe you're working out at home. Your whole life has changed and you have this child to care for now and to consider in all of these decisions of when you work out, how you work out, and things like that. So you've also probably, if you are working out during your pregnancy, you've probably lowered your weights that you're using quite a bit when you get toward the end. Then you have a long period that you're taking off. And so you should just expect to start with much lower weights. You will progress quickly if you've been working out already during your pregnancy. The more experience you have before you've had a baby, the faster you can actually get that strength and muscle back. And so, which is of course why we encourage being in shape before and during the pregnancy. But let's say you are starting out and you've never really done this before. It's going to be the same as I would recommend for any client. We're going to look at your nutrition and make sure that all of your macros are balanced and at the correct levels. We're going to start with resistance training and not really focus on cardio for a while, so you can get your metabolism into a much better place. Now, if you're breastfeeding, your metabolism is going to be a lot different anyway. You are using up a lot of extra calories. You're going to be needing to eat more. That's actually when you're eating more for two than you are during the actual pregnancy itself.
Right.
And make sure you're very, very hydrated. You're losing a lot of liquid in your day.
Yes.
So depending on if the mother is breastfeeding or not breastfeeding, might change the training program a little bit or the nutrition a little bit. But essentially, it's going to be a progressive overload, starting pretty small and working your way up, starting with just compound movements at first before we need to add anything else in, because that's where those big strength and muscle gains and help with the metabolism are really gonna live. That's where that happens.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And just to encourage like any ladies who are like postpartum and want to start training. So every woman that we have trained has been stronger than I was when I first started postpartum after our fourth baby. Like I could not get the 45-pound bar over my head. I had to just like do partials for a few weeks until I could finally get it for one. And then I had to do like 2 sets of one and then 3 sets of one. And because I just hadn't trained at all, and we had 4 babies in like 6 years, and I was in really rough shape when I first got to it.
And I think that that's very common, especially after a few babies or a couple or even one. A lot of women see that they get back down to the weight that they were before, and they're like, how come I look so different?
Yes.
It's usually because you weren't training and you didn't eat enough protein. And so when you made the baby, and if you nursed, when you made the milk, there wasn't enough protein to go. You weren't taking in enough protein, so your body got it where it was stored, and you broke down a lot of muscle mass. And usually, a lot of women lose a lot of muscle mass, particularly on their lower bodies, because there wasn't much upper body to spare. And so, like that's why, like, oh, I got back down to my weight, but then it looks different, and I'm a dress size larger. I don't understand. That's what's going on. Is yes, you do weigh the same, but your composition might be very different because you're carrying more body fat and less muscle tissue than before. And so you are going to look a lot different. And it is obviously not as healthy. And the way to mitigate that is with training and high protein intake, because you're gonna make a baby one way or the other, and that takes a bunch of protein. And your body's going to get protein wherever it's available. And if you're not eating it, then it's going to be from storage.
Yeah, there's a lot of atrophy that can happen for sure. Muscle is expensive tissue to keep, and you need to make sure you are taking in what you need to keep it, which is protein and resistance training and things like that. And so when you do get into postpartum workout and you're building that back up, it's important to just maybe not step on the scale for a little while.
Mhm.
And I think it'd be fun to take progress pictures
Yeah.
and look at that as you go, of course.
Yeah.
But maybe just stay away from the scale a little bit. We get way too in our heads about
Mhm.
that, and aren't quite understanding the composition that may have changed. And,
Right.
even if you're, like you said, at the same weight as before, but you look totally different,
Yeah.
you might even think, oh, now I need to get even smaller. I need to lose even more weight.
Right.
I'm
Right.
going to do a lot of cardio and cut back all my food.
Mhm.
And you just create this loop and you're just becoming more and more skinny fat
Right.
instead of improving your metabolism and putting that strength back on. And that strength that you need because that baby is going to turn into a toddler, it's going to turn into a kid, and you want to keep up and be able to
Yeah.
hold them. I've had a lot of moms say the best arm shape of their life was when they had toddlers. You're just
Right.
carrying them
Yeah, they're like 30
constantly.
pounds and you're just like they're all over and sometimes you got two at a time or whatever
Yeah.
and
Exactly. And then those same ladies are afraid of 10-pound dumbbells.
I know. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's like your
you're
diaper
not
bag is
gonna
15 pounds. What are you kidding me?
exactly. And the car seat with the infant in it in the other arm and all the groceries in the other arm.
Right.
Yeah, women can carry a lot of stuff when they don't think it's gonna make them bulky,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it won't.
You just had a baby. Why are you worried about being bulky?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like
exactly.
that's like nothing makes you bulkier than a baby. So
Right.
That's
even if
true.
you don't gain any fat during the whole pregnancy, like just the water
Mhm.
retention alone, like you're gonna have
Yeah.
whatever. Like that's more bulk than you'll ever put on with as far as muscle goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that water retention and the swelling and stuff, it's amazing how fast the body gets rid of that after the
Yeah.
baby's born. It's like it's so fast. It's like
Yeah.
one day to the next you're just not swollen anymore.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yep. It's
it's a
totally
purge.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say like it will be to your advantage, especially some of us, like maybe you had your first or second baby, if you want to have a large family, to
Mhm.
prioritize that postpartum time so that by the time
Yeah.
it comes where you want to have another baby, you're not starting with the 30 pounds you already have from the last baby or the muscle
Mhm.
loss that you accumulated or anything
Yeah,
like that. Like you will just continue to do better and better if you can put in a little bit of work to get yourself pulled back together before you can have another baby. And
Right.
I'm sure your husbands would be very, very supportive of that if you went and said, like, look, babe, I'd love to just get healthy and get back in shape before we have another baby. I want to,
Mhm.
keep my muscle mass and, see if he can watch the kids, see if you can pick up a home gym, see if, you can work on some healthy meals together. Like if you want to have a larger family, that goes a really long way. There are some people who actually like will not be able to have more kids because mom gets in such poor health, even though they would love
Right.
to. And that
Mhm.
is a really, really hard place to be in. So,
yeah,
Yeah, that's super difficult and emotional, and
yeah,
especially when you know that it could have been prevented. So
right.
that's a really hard place to be and can definitely trigger a lot of depression. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
postpartum time is a very special time with your baby, and it's a very important time for you to refocus on yourself. And I would say, don't if you are nursing, do not do any extreme weight loss. Actually, just don't even think about weight loss at all. Think about strength. That's the number you should be chasing. Getting stronger, and the body composition will follow. But you don't want to deprive your baby of important nutrients by going on an extreme deficit, and um, and you want to make sure that your mindset is in the right place for where you're going postpartum.
Yeah. As far as like realistic expectations, it does seem highly individual for a lot of women, depending on your starting place, depending on your
Yeah,
mindset, depending on how quickly your hormones are able to come back. Because some of you might not know, like your placenta is taking care of most of your hormones when you're pregnant, and when you push
yeah,
that baby out, you push out the placenta too, and you're kind of hormoneless for a little bit, and all of that has to come back online. Plus, you've got prolactin if you're breastfeeding, and you've got
hmm
sleep deprivation and maybe some insulin resistance because of that. So I've seen women, especially if they were active and, already have so many healthy habits in place, be able to get in a good mindset and a good body composition 3, 4, 5 months after birth. But if
hmm
that's not you, it might take a year or more for you to get to a place where you're comfortable and healthy again. And that's okay. That really, really is okay.
yeah, absolutely. It can take quite a bit of time for all of that to come back online. So be patient, give yourself grace, and expect it to take a lot longer. I know us just in the fitness world, and none of us are pregnant right now. We know how long it takes just to get our goals hit. It takes
Yeah.
years for the amount of muscle or strength that we're wanting to put on. And so it should be no different when you're coming out of postpartum. And that doesn't mean you have to wait all the way until you're exactly how you want to look to have another baby. I mean, babies are a blessing, and all glory to God for the ones that we get to have.
Mm-hmm.
So don't try to, get in the exact perfect shape and then be ready to have your next baby. Just keep those habits.
You're gonna have some conversations with your husband of like, what does this look like for us to
Right.
be happy moving forward, for us to be healthy, for it to be sustainable. Like those are household decisions for you guys to make. But I think that a lot of women can get farther than they think, but they also have to have more patience than they want to have, especially postpartum.
It's a lot more about just creating the habits and the consistency that's needed. And that's going to carry you through all the pregnancies that you have and all the postpartum time that you're going to have. As if you develop those habits and you're consistent with your nutrition and your fitness, you're going to go a long way no matter what phase you're in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's still going to come back to how you were doing before you became pregnant. Is going to be the biggest component of that, more than pretty much anything else. Like, you can't compensate for the lifestyle, poor lifestyle before pregnancy, and then try to fix it during pregnancy and expect it. I mean, you'll be better off, but you wouldn't be nearly as well off as if you had been doing the right things before. And so it does come, a lot of it does come down to preparation. And what was your health state before pregnancy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure. Do you have any extra nutrition advice, Amanda, for postpartum? Or I know you mentioned hydration already, and you kind of mentioned just in the calories a little bit. Is there anything specific that you had in mind that you didn't mention already as far as nutrition postpartum?
Yeah, I know that you get hungry very quickly whenever you're nursing. So if you have some more fiber-rich meals, that might go a long way in keeping you fuller a little bit longer, so you're not just, feeling starving
3
the
a.m.
entire day.
Yeah, and you eat lots of meat. Just like go for meat as much as possible. You need the protein. You're going to need everything else that's in there.
Yeah,
and then,
a lot of those minerals are great for hormone production, which you're going to need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then along the lines of the fiber you mentioned, just lots of fruits and vegetables.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's there. You need a lot when you're nursing, and even recovering. Postpartum, the first couple of weeks, there's a lot of tissue healing that needs to happen. You need to have adequate energy intake for that. You need to have a lot of it's protein, but you're just going to need everything else. And I think that the focus should mostly be on protein, and then just getting all the veggies you can. Obviously, carbs are good too, but you don't really need to emphasize carbs so much. It's just like every diet or every meal should have a significant protein source with it, and a fruit and or vegetable should be present.
Yeah, definitely keeping the protein up, and choosing fruits and vegetables as your carb source. Like when I say get more fiber, I'm not saying eat a loaf of bread or anything like that. Because like you said, I know everyone's making sourdough now too, but I mean, which is totally fine. I'm not anti-bread, but since you're replenishing other micronutrients, then fruits and vegetables are going to cover those bases.
Yeah, definitely. And I was glad you mentioned hydration. I have seen moms who have struggled with breastfeeding that it's purely been hydration occasionally. Like you're just not drinking enough water to output more water sometimes. And so that if you are trying to breastfeed, and I know you're so tired, you might have other kids, like water can really fall by the wayside sometimes. So get whatever water bottle you love and chug it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and if you
flavored like syrup things can help.
Yeah,
keep
they
you compliant too.
That can help a
It
lot
makes you
for
tend
sure.
to drink a little bit more. I wouldn't even say more often. But you tend to drink larger portions when you drink.
Yeah. It tastes good.
Yeah. And if you do already have some older kids, it can be one of their job to keep mama's water cup full and
Right.
make
Yeah.
sure you're asking her during the day.
Good idea. Yeah. And we didn't mention this during the pregnancy section, but it occurred to me later on. I want to make sure we mention it because I know a lot of women struggle with morning sickness, and a
Yeah.
higher protein diet has been proven to help your morning sickness. So if you guys are struggling with nausea or vomiting or anything like that, if you can get protein in, even I've heard of women keeping protein shakes like by the bedside and even chugging it if they get up at night and they're nauseous, or even first thing in the morning, particularly before they even get up, because sometimes that motion can trigger nausea. Like those protein shakes can come in real clutch and I've seen them be significant helps in a lot of women and nausea. And sometimes you can't crave, or meat doesn't sound as good, but if you can try and find something that does sound good, that has a good 20 to 30 grams of protein in it for breakfast, like part of it's blood sugar and part of it's just promoting a healthier state of being so that you're not as nauseous. It is a real thing. And so if you're someone that struggles with that, definitely prioritize the proteins somehow.
And most women that I've seen struggle with feeling like meat is gross when they're pregnant.
Very, very common.
It is very common. But all of the ones that I've gotten to actually eat it say that once they start eating it, they like it. It's just more like for some reason there's like it seems icky when they're not eating it. But in most cases, when I've talked to women about trying to eat it and they actually do give it a genuine try, once they start eating, it's like, oh, that was actually really good and really satisfying. I have a theory that it's partly social conditioning. That because and I could be wrong on that, but like I just think some of it's an expectation thing, because there's an expectation around pregnant women eat basically junk food. That's like, because it's like you're eating for two, and there's all these narratives around it. But I do think that it's, and there's also social conditioning against women eating meat. That it's almost like not feminine to eat a lot of meat. Sometimes.
And how did that happen? When did that happen? Like,
I
don't
know.
understand.
I don't know. But it does seem to be a thing. And so I just wonder how much of it's social and things like that, because when we've gotten women to actually start eating meat that are pregnant, they're like, well, I don't really feel like it or whatever. They start doing it, and then I've never had one report like, oh yeah, I tried and it didn't work. Like they all say it works, and they all say they feel better. And once they start doing it, then they start like kind of craving the meat because of how good it makes them feel.
Right.
Yeah, if you try it and it works for you, you're going to want to keep doing it typically. So, I mean, there's other options, like you said, protein shakes, Greek yogurt, eggs, if you're able to do eggs. Sometimes the texture of those isn't that great during pregnancy.
Sometimes.
But like yogurt, almost every pregnant woman that I know can eat Greek yogurt. And that I have known. And so it's easier to swallow. If you have an ice cream craving, use that as a substitute. And you're getting some protein as well. And I do like that you mentioned having a protein shake in the morning. Like that's something that continues. We talk about this a lot. Women making sure that they eat breakfast and it has at least 30 grams of protein in it. That's no different during pregnancy or postpartum, and it's going to set you up for a better day and help you make better decisions for the rest of your food throughout that day. So protein shake is a great option if you're just unable to stomach anything else. Of course, having a bigger breakfast is preferable, but if a shake is all you can do it. Don't skip it.
Yeah, we were with a lady, I think it was like 6 months ago now or something. She was just feeling terrible, right? And she was a sweet friend. She wasn't a client, but I went over there to just check on her one day, and I brought her a bunch of Fairlife chocolate shakes. And I think I even
those are
bought
delicious.
like some ground beef. And I was like, just try drinking these in the morning and try and have a burger every day. I was like, do you like hamburgers? She's like, oh, I love hamburgers. That sounds so good. And she's not someone I was worried about like weight gain. She's super thin, like she always keeps it in check during pregnancy. And, it's like, just try having one of these in the morning and like have a burger every lunch for like the next little bit and see how you feel. And she texted me like the week after, was like, I just feel so much better. I can't believe it. Like,
that's great. I love that.
Like, praise the Lord. That is amazing.
Yeah, it is the same story almost every time though. It's like you up the protein and all of a sudden a bunch of things start falling into place.
Yeah. Just like find a way that you can do it, that you can stomach it, make it happen.
Mhm.
And it's a lot more doable than some people think.
Yeah. Well, Emily, what was your craving during pregnancy?
Oh man, I didn't, so what was funny, I didn't really get a lot of cravings with the boys. I liked cereal, which was terrible with the boys. With Evelyn, watermelon. She was our girl, the only girl that I've had, and I craved watermelon with her, which was a bummer because she was born in springtime, and so there wasn't much watermelon.
Oh no. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you didn't really have like crazy.
I never had the crazy weird cravings like pickles and ice cream or peanut butter
We didn't
and
eat.
ketchup.
I mean, obviously we eat way better now, but
Yeah.
we didn't eat poorly back then. It was definitely not as good.
Yeah.
But I think that the women that are struggling with that stuff, they're like skipping breakfast, and like when they do eat, it's like a snack. It's like snack foods, like junk food lunch kind of thing with like a diet soda, like a bag of chips and a diet soda, and then like and they ride this up and down cascade of like insulin, and then hunger signaling, ghrelin, and like I think that that's a big part of what leads to it. And like even if you have a modicum of a decent diet, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. That people in a lot of other countries, they don't even have a like a term for pregnancy cravings. It's not like it's not a thing for them. Like I've heard that's the case in Japan and in many like
very healthy eating
Spanish-speaking
countries.
cultures. Yeah, because they're eating meat and natural foods, and so like it's just not really part of their discussion. Like there's also not similarly, there's not like expressions for hot flashes in a lot of these countries. They just don't.
Wow.
It's not even menopausal women. It's not really described because their food intake is probably better. Their environment's probably kind of healthier. And so you just don't really run into those issues. I think they're often very environmentally derived issues and diet derived issues when you're having these types of cravings, because that is your body telling you something that you should listen to, but it doesn't mean you should do what your first inclination is to like. Just because you want ice cream doesn't mean you should have ice cream. It means you're probably, like you mentioned, you might be calcium deficient. So dairy or a calcium supplement would be the way to go. Now the whole pickle thing, eat all the pickles you want. I mean,
that's not going to hurt
bad for you. Yeah, they're not bad for you. You're not getting a lot of calories. You're getting fiber and you're getting salt. So that actually, I'd say, like, if you wanted to go crazy on like pickles or whatever, then just eat pickles. But like some of the other things, the ice cream cravings, like those are telling you something. The chocolate cravings, they're telling you something, and what they're telling you is often things they're gonna, frankly, just can be found in more meat.
Yeah, and we've very much been conditioned to use food as a coping mechanism or a reward, and so it's hard to break free of that. And of course, your emotions are going to be more intense when you're pregnant, and a lot easier to give into those cravings. So, do yourself a favor and make good habits now.
Yeah, definitely. I will say that our eating was the worst probably when I was pregnant with our first baby. We were just like broke. We were eating a lot of pasta and like whatever you could afford, right? Cup of noodle.
We didn't know anything.
We didn't know anything, and that was when that was by far the worst morning sickness I had out of all 4 of our kids. Like I was so sick.
Yeah.
And so our eating did get like gradually better. As you learn more, but this is before we were even lifting or anything. And my morning sickness did get gradually better, as our eating did. So I found that very interesting. But yeah, did you crave anything when you were pregnant?
I craved Italian food, like Alfredo and stuff like that. Chicken Alfredo. All the cheese in the world. Yeah. That's what I wanted.
Nice. Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't have any of the like ice or like pica stuff because I was anemic when I was pregnant, and I didn't really crave anything iron rich. Really, I did get on an iron supplement, which probably helped to mitigate that. So,
I've heard of even, I think it was Native American women in the United States were described historically as eating red clay or red dirt because of the iron content when they were pregnant because they can't, it's like they had iron supplements. And so it was a way, if they were short on meat or whatever, to just get iron in their system.
Interesting.
They would make like I believe they would make like a clay that, basically put dirt and water and then drink it.
Made that similar drink of some sort.
And they actually craved it and like wanted it.
Yeah. And that obviously that wouldn't taste very good or be appealing when you're not craving it, but you will put anything in your mouth if you are craving it.
You want it bad enough.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, cool. I think that was a good handling on the topic. Thanks, ladies, for your contribution and sharing everything. If anybody wants to talk to Amanda or Emily about any of this stuff, you can obviously find us at High Calling Fitness on Facebook and the other socials. But more importantly, you can find us on highcallingfitness.com and book a meeting and talk with us. Just schedule whatever works for you. And we'd be happy to talk further with anybody about their health and fitness goals and how we might be able to be of service. So thanks everyone for listening, and gains and grace.
Gains and grace.